Yo, and welcome to the Always Better Than Yesterday interview sessions. Today, I have an awesome guest that I connected with through Esther McCann at her You Deserve Abundance event in London back in January. And Emily and I connected. Emily Harbrecht is my guest today. Emily and I connected at that event. And you know, when you just meet someone who just aligns and you just think, I need to spend more time with this human being. And actually, I can't keep it to myself. So I brought her on our podcast. So welcome, Emily.
Thank you so much. I feel the same, feelings mutual. And I'd just like to say, this is my first podcast and I'm so pleased it's with you.
Amazing. Amazing. Let's keep this as clean as we can because I
Yeah.
was going to be inappropriate. Amazing. It's so good to have you join us. So please, for the benefit of the listeners and the viewers, please just give yourself a bit of an introduction, who you are, what you do, and a little bit about your journey to where you are right now.
Well, I'm a personal development enthusiast. I'll start by saying that because I'm one of these people that's multi-passionate. And at the moment, my main passions are helping our children to get the tools and strategies that they really need for situations like we're in today. So my business, Mind Tools for Kids, gives kids just that. We give them ways to be resilient, to manage their complex emotions. And for most children, they're all complex. I'm training new coaches to go out and spread the message and help them do that. And then I do some work on the side in my other business with men predominantly who are dealing with anger issues, big emotions that, you know what, if they'd have had those tools when they were kids, they'd probably be having a different experience now. So this is a real vocation for me. As cheesy as it sounds, I would do this even without financial, whatever. It just is who I am. I've always been that strange little geeky sage in the playground, with the stories and positivity and wanting to guide people and help them on their way. So I've been doing this about 12 years. Who knows where it will go, Ryan? I hope by meeting people like you we'll do great collaborations and open up many possibilities.
I love that. And I think just to pick up on the words you used around multi-passion and, my background is policing and a lot of that kind of defines who people are, people seem to get defined by being a police officer. My dad was a prison officer. People, whether they're photographers or coaches, they can get wrapped up in who they are in terms of what they do. But I love the fact that you come at it from a multi-passion. And what connects the things that you do? What is your heart? Where are you coming at it from?
Do you know what? It's only really in the last few months have I finally consciously seen the connection, because I, like many people, would do my work, love doing my work, always working on the end user rather than marketing it. And I struggled to sort of think, where's the correlation? But actually, when I look at it, what comes through for me is the personality piece. We are trying to fit into certain boxes in life. So at the core of my work is to just scrap that and to really focus on our individuality, our quirks, our little edges that we might be told we need to sand off, to embrace them and to just celebrate individuality and to make it okay to just be who we are. That really is the thread that sort of emanates through everything I do.
How would you describe a quirk?
Well, so for instance, strengths and weaknesses, I think that's just such a sort of old hat way of looking at things. We all show up in different situations in different ways. And I think depending on the social context that we're in, some of our behaviour may seem appropriate and some of it may seem a little bit atypical, a little bit quirky. So in the context of some of the gents I work with that might be doing really well in business, might be doing well in the workplace, they might be quite fired up and passionate and they're seen as being overly emotional, when actually what we want is for gents to be able to process this stuff. They may have self-imposed quirks, things that they feel aren't the societal norm. So anything where anyone feels that they're on the outside and that they feel that's a quirk, I'm happy to help them flip it and hold the mirror up so they can look at it from another perspective.
Love that. So you've been doing this 12 years. How did you get into it?
I always wanted to coach. And when I was in my early 20s, I thought, you know what, I need to be seriously grey to do this. I've got to be like 25 years older before I can do this, because people won't want to take me seriously. But then I was in the workplace and I started to do some workplace stuff. And I thought, you know what? Actually, people are willing to listen to me. I can actually do this right now. So I did. And I started with just absorbing as many self-help books, some of the early favorites like Dale Carnegie, some of the presentation stuff, meeting people, communication, and it's just snowballed from there. So this is what I do for kicks, for fun, for happy times, sad times. It's just become really intrinsically part of who I am on an identity level.
I often talk about do what you love, and that doesn't mean you get a free pass and it's all easy. And there's often sacrifices. I guess the question is, A, do you love what you do? And B, have there been sacrifices along the way?
I do love what I do, and there are continual sacrifices and moments where I have to, for myself, step out and look through like a third person perspective and think, am I over focusing on this? Do I need to make more space in my life? Am I enjoying this so much that it's hard to work out where the balance lies? That is definitely something that I feel within myself at the moment, especially with the current climate that we're in, where I really feel that despite whatever might be going on in my own life, it's time to show up and drop anchor for the people around us that need it. So yeah, the love for it gives me so much energy that when I stop and I'm on downtime, I'm probably still working on it. I then start being creative with how I can bring the message to more people. So I think for me, I look at it this way. I will never retire from this, Ryan, ever. I never see myself retiring. I know at times I have to manage my own energy and have a bit of rest and recuperation, but this is such a part of who I am and how I show up on a daily basis that I'm just joyful that I've found it and I get to do this.
I love that. I love your passion for it. And you and I have very similar views on what makes a good coach, but what do you think makes a good coach?
I think presence, and I don't mean presence as in like, you know, like, look at me, I'm here. I mean just switching off your own internal dialogue completely, so that you're totally present with that person in front. And if you're absolutely present for that person and you're willing to hold the space for them to show up with vulnerability, and you have the right intention for them to get what they need from the experience, then I think really I'll go against the grain and say that's all that's really needed to be a great coach. We get so caught up in models and questioning frames and all this stuff that can mean that the coach is so focused on that, they're missing what's really there in front of them.
It's a really good point to come in on, because the executives you work with, the busy people, might take a lot of time to slow down and switch off, and they'll get home and there'll be young people around. Something I've personally struggled with in the past is being present after a busy day. You know, and it's a core skill of a coach. It's a core skill of a parent. You know, how would you support or challenge people to become more present?
I think I always come from a beliefs and values perspective, because again, I think a lot of us have been taught that we can't have it all, and that there's always going to be one casualty in our lives. And for a lot of people, that can be their family life or spending time with others. And I think by demystifying that and saying, actually, we can't put things in boxes anymore. We need to look at our life as a whole, and shifting their feelings around that, they naturally start to understand they can make more time for it. They can stop and say, actually, that this is as important as my work. So there's no longer that sort of internal conflict with it. It's more understanding that we are whole. We don't have to put this facade on when we put a certain hat on.
I love that, because that's very true in leadership as well. What's your view on leadership?
Oh, I'm so passionate about leaders emerging now with values at the core. I mean, we all have our own beliefs and values, but really unifying that in the culture of the environment that they're leading and creating a vision so compelling, so heart-led, that actually the people want to follow and engage in it, rather than being the old traditional managerial browbeaten into doing it through fear. So for me, leadership is turning on its head, and we are seeing a change in that now. We're seeing a lot of it right now with the current climate, with, you know, scaremongering and things like that. We're starting to see the whites of people's eyes and whether they are heart-led and whether they are really there for their people. But I think, especially as we move more into the sort of AI world, where we have all this fear about things being more robot-led, that the heart-centered will triumph, because we will be needed. You can't replace that. That is what's needed, really, to glue people together in times of adversity and to inspire them to be part of something.
I love that. And you and I are connected by loving helping the next generation.
Yes.
What's the legacy of Mind Tools for Kids? I know that you're scaling to have greater impact, but what's the legacy?
Ooh, that's really interesting. Do you know what? It's been really funny for me, because when I first started Mind Tools for Kids, I was really reluctant to have my own name associated with it, because being an introvert, I felt like, oh, that's just like, I want this to be big and I can't have my name there, because I'm not really about me. It's about this thing. And actually, that's what's helped me to grow it. I see it as a vessel. The legacy is for children to learn, to have the skills, so that rather than, like I was saying to my coaches last night, I don't want them to be these magicians that can wave a magic wand for kids. I want them to teach children so that they can do that for themselves and they can transfer it into other areas of their life. So I'm looking to, in effect, make them their own coaches, so that they go through with a completely different set of filters than they would have had into their adulthood. And that the problems that would have been there are no longer there, because they have the ability to stop, to notice what's happening in their body, to relate that to emotion, to think about it logically, to reframe it, and to actually then come from a place of resilience. So it's developing the legacy. I've been so overwhelmed this week with the coaches coming on board, stepping up really early on into their learning process. We're only 3 weeks into the program, and already they are giving so much of themselves, because they realize that this is what they're meant to do, and that the children need them now. It's done so much for their confidence. It's really made me think how much bigger I could make this with them on board, and how we can spread a message about love, about resilience, and just letting kids feel heard, to know that it's okay to feel.
Yeah, I love that. And there's that phrase, isn't there? It goes something along the lines as it's better to help a child than to heal a broken adult, or something like that.
Gosh, yes.
It's real proactive, and I love that sense. So the government come in tomorrow and they give you a call and they say, Emily, we need your help to shape the syllabus for the next 5 years, and we want to have a Mind Tools for Kids syllabus. What's on it? What are some of the tools that the kids up and down the classroom will start to learn and equip themselves with?
Well, I'm super ready for this, so I'll accept your offer, Mr. Government Official. We will start with teaching them some triune brain theory, so they can start to understand on a simplistic level what is going on for them. Maybe they can look at some of the experiences that have not been helpful in their life, and they can understand how to shift those within their body. They'll learn to make sense of their emotions and understand about their developing brain. I think it's really important that they learn what's going on, so that they have the understanding, not just a shiny tool that gives them a quick fix. So that would be where I'd start. I would then go in to start to show them all the resourceful states and experiences they've already had in their life, and to help them to access those and be super flexible in how they behave in certain situations. So that gives them some choice. And then I would start to look at all sorts of other exciting things, like how they can use anchoring consciously in their life, so that they can feel really amazing in certain situations. And then we can play around with things like learning strategies. And you know what my favorite bit is that I do with kids is helping them find their voice, helping them find what's really important to them, and thinking not about like what job will I do? Because I really believe that the word career is dying out. But to say to them, if you could fix something right now, if you could be part of a solution in the world, what would you really feel passionate about that being? What really gets you thinking, yes? And I've seen even the most shy and timid child who's really feeling like lost in the world, that question alone can make them puff their chest up and feel so empowered. And I think when we do that, that's when we create the heart-centered leaders of tomorrow, people with big vision.
I love that. I love that. And you have lived and you've breathed this for so long. For those parents that are listening to this podcast right now, what are the simple one or two things that they can do right here, right now to make a difference to their kids?
I think one message I'd give to parents is be mindful of labels. We often do it to protect them. It's in our nature to want to do it to protect our kids, to say they're shy. It's part of who we are. But be mindful, because actually for children, these words are very subjective and these labels can stick. And actually when we try and then teach them strategies, it can be quite hard for them to have that identity shift. So I would say shift your focus on really connecting with your child in the moment. Do some self-care for yourself first, because I know they challenge us on such a cellular level that sometimes things come up for us and we think, where did that come from? Way, way back. But connect with them in the moment and be curious about how they are showing up in that situation rather than what specifically they're doing. Look at whether their physiology is a certain way, whether their breathing's changed, and give them a little bit of time and space to process what's going on. Help them talk through what they're experiencing and to process their emotions, whatever it is they're experiencing. Because when we hold the space for our children and we connect and we allow them to have that experience, we validate it. And that's when they can start to regulate, and then they will become independent children that can manage their own ups and downs.
You coach people at both ends of the spectrum in terms of the young and the, I would say old, but like the adults. Do you see manifestations of things when they go unresolved at a younger age, like play out later in? Are there vulnerabilities and weaknesses that transpire if they don't develop these tools?
Yes, absolutely. In so many different situations, you might see someone that really holds back in life because they've learned that behavior, or it's a safety mechanism that they've learned in early childhood. It can happen at any time. Also, you could think on the surface of it, maybe think any adults watching this, you could have had the most idyllic childhood, but there might be something that was the difference that made the difference for you that went on and had an impact. My message would be, it doesn't matter how old you are, our brain is plastic. We can stretch it, we can fire off new neural pathways, and we can change things. We just need to do the work to do that. We need to be consciously aware of these patterns, notice them, and then start to look at how we can go back and soothe and deal with the emotions and actually bring the logic back to it and choose a better way. So it's easier when we do it in childhood. And I think to get the opportunity to work with kids and do that then is great, but all is not lost. We can still do that. And you know what? I think being a parent is one of those times where we think, God, where did that come from? Things do come up for us. And it might even be, for instance, might be things around money in the household when we were kids, or our attitude towards food, or whether we felt loved or not. Whether it's real or imagined, these things, they just pop up, and they pop up because we are ready to look at them and to fire off new connections and give ourselves another way.
Yeah, very true. You talked about being the sage, the timid, and even some of those limiting beliefs when you first looked at coaching. And what's really helped you embrace your quirks?
I think for me, the biggest thing that's helped me is realizing and accepting how introverted I actually am. For years, I just ignored it and thought, I just don't get on with people. I just don't get on with people. I don't like groups of people. When actually, I just charge my energy up in a different way. And I personally value connection on a deeper level one-on-one where I can really like look at the stars with someone and say, what is this all about? When I realized that, I gave myself permission to just show up as who I am and to say, this is who I am. And it's made everything a lot easier, meeting people, being who I am. More people have come forward and said, well, I feel like that. So it just shows that we're all there in our own minds on our own journey, but we're not dissimilar from the next person. It's just, I think a lot of us have been trained to sort of button it up and keep it in here.
What have been some of the really key pivotal resources, whether it be books, education, self-reflection, that have helped you along your way?
Oh my gosh. Well, I think for me, when I first started all the NLP stuff, I immersed myself in it on such a like level. When I first went and did my training, I thought I will be at the mercy of the process. And rather than watching and learning, I'm going to work this through to the very core of who I am. And I cleared up things like IBS that I'd had for years, terrible tension, headaches, stress issues that had manifested in my body. And there was no better convincer strategy for me than to walk out of that experience suddenly free and not feeling these horrendous feelings that I'd had in my body. That was a real big moment for me. And it really taught me that the mind-body connection is everything. It's cannot be ignored. It's such a huge thing. And it has shaped my work, especially with the children. It's made me strip out all the jargon and just really relate everything back to how we connect the physical and the mental. So that's been really big. Lately, I would say it's been more the work of people like Dan Siegel, Dr. Russ, and triune brain theory, things like the upstairs, downstairs brain, bringing a little bit more neuroscience into it. Because I think, especially moving forward, it helps to bring these softer skills in with elements of science. It's a nice way I could see this rolling out in the curriculum with children if we start to link it a little bit more, not just about PHSE, but also bring the scientific element in. So that's definitely influenced me, I'd say, in the last 12 months.
Yeah, love that. We said at the very start that we were connected by being co-members of the Positive Mindset panel. What's your top tip for people that want to develop a positive mindset?
Top tip? Oh gosh, there's so many. I would say we all have a sat nav in our mind. We all have one, but we're sometimes very good at putting in the coordinates of where we don't want to go. But we go around in circles. So my advice, if you really want to have a positive mindset, is to, number one, decide where you're going, even if it's just up the road. Just go forward, set the coordinates to where you want to go and stay focused on that. So, and I use this example for people that are in an unhappy relationship. You'll hear people that are in an unhappy relationship, oh, everyone I meet's like this. I only meet people that are like this. Well, who would you like to meet instead? Well, I don't want to meet someone like that. Well, what do you want instead? So I do this with children all the time. I'll say, all right, if you don't want the ham sandwich, what do you want? Let's set your sat nav on the direction that you want to go. And it's amazing how many people unconsciously aren't doing that. And I really think that that's a difference that makes the difference. If we just say, not there, here, that a lot of stuff just goes because it's not in our line of vision anymore.
I love that. I love that. You know, my ethos is about always better than yesterday. I'm just curious to know what the phrase always better than yesterday means to you.
What springs to my mind instantly with that phrase is kindness to self. And I think it's more my message from it. So I'm a real optimist. I'm very forward focused, very future focused. So for me, skipping the present and going from yesterday to forward seems a natural thing to do, but I very rarely look back. I'm always so focused, and in times I will not give myself credit for what I've achieved, but by actually saying always better than yesterday, it gets me to go back and be kind to myself and think, okay, well, that was pretty good as well.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting time shift to do that. So I love that concept. I really, really do.
requires a benchmark, doesn't it? And to have a benchmark, you've got to look at what you've achieved to date. Love
Exactly.
that.
And
Thank
acknowledge
you.
it rather than just quickly deleting it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, how can people connect with you? Where can people find you and find out more about what you're doing and how to connect with you?
I have a busy, buzzy Facebook page that I keep nice and light and full of all sorts of helpful things for kids and parents. I also have a parents Facebook group where we share ideas, and where people can come and just show up and be vulnerable and say,
Mm,
I don't know what to do with this.
mm,
And all my new coaches are in there now doing their thing. So if you feel like you want to open up your mindset to maybe learning some new tips and strategies, or you want somewhere to go and just offload and think, is this just me? Then please do reach out and connect.
yeah, I love that. And for the executives, who should make contact with you?
I work with guys predominantly who are doing really well, but are rubbing people up the wrong way, and it's becoming a conscious problem for them. It's not something that can be sort of left to drift away. I mostly meet these gents on LinkedIn, and I think we find each other in this sort of cathartic way at the right moment in time. So we can connect on there, and we can have a conversation and see where you're at. And I can share some of my tools and tricks so that you can just be who you are, but with a slightly softer edge in the right situation, just so it removes some of the blocks and you can do what you intend to do with a bit of
Mm,
finesse. So yes, I really love social media. Being an introvert, Ryan, it's great to be able to connect with people all over the world. It's well, look, it's
yeah.
just such a great thing, isn't it?
Yeah, used intentionally, absolutely. And
Yes.
before we wrap up, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to spend it with us, and to our viewers, watchers, listeners who've made it this far through. Hope that there's been one thing that is really standing out for you within this interview, that if you put into practice will help you be better than you were yesterday. And Emily, please do us the honor of leaving a final thought from yourself.
My final thought is refer to Ryan's message. Give yourself credit for what you've already achieved. Even if it's something that you think is really small, that is something to give you the momentum. And when you're thinking about your tomorrow, focus on the direction you want to go in, not what you don't want instead.
I love that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.